The question is, can an emotionally immature person change? Can they even become more emotionally mature? And the answer is yes. They absolutely can. Anyone at any time in their life, no matter how old they are, can absolutely become more emotionally mature. And the biggest reason why someone isn't emotionally mature in the first place is because they never learned how to be. They were never taught it, or they were never modeled it. They didn't have anyone there to show them how to handle emotions, how to take responsibility for themselves, how to be healthy in their communication. And so if they never learned it and they never really got a chance to pick it up along the way of their life, then they wouldn't be emotionally mature now. The other truth is that all of us can work on becoming more emotionally mature, and it's a journey that never really ends. But if you are dealing with someone now who is very emotionally immature and you find it really frustrating, then we're going to talk today about what they need to do to become more emotionally mature and some steps that they can start with, and even some stuff that you can start with to help you as you have to continuously engage with someone who is emotionally mature and the frustrations that can come with that. But first, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you're back again, always good to have you. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, a speaker, and an author, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this work to the next level, and you are being guided and supported the whole way through. I help heart-centered humans think better, feel better, and live better so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. So we established that yes, someone who is emotionally immature can absolutely become more emotionally mature. But here's the clincher. They have to want to. They have to be willing to. And the thing that can sometimes make it tough is that often with emotional immaturity comes a lack of self-awareness, a lack of truly being able to see how the way that they are acting and how they handle things and how they communicate and how they deal with their emotions, how those things are being done in an emotionally immature way. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to shed some light on this for that person in your life that you're thinking of right now. And then we're going to talk about specific things that they need to do to build that emotional maturity. And quite frankly, that all of us can be working on a regular basis to build our own emotional maturity. And it's also important that we are working on it, because one of the main indicators of change for that emotionally immature person that you're close with is them observing emotionally mature ways of handling things. So the more you're able to handle things in emotionally mature ways, the more they are going to be exposed to that and see that and influenced by that. And so you are going to be really helping them by also helping yourself. But before we get into what you can be pointing them towards to be working on to build that emotional maturity, let's all get on the same page by identifying what exactly we're talking about here when we are talking about someone who is emotionally mature. So some of the key identifying features for someone who is emotionally immature is that they lack that self-awareness. They have a limited understanding of their own emotions, and they can't really self-reflect on their parts of the issue or their own emotional experiences. The next thing, they have a difficulty managing their emotions. So in times of tension, in times of conflict, they will either usually shut down and just not talk about anything, or they will lash out. It's usually going to be one of the two extremes. And you might also find that they are quite moody and they never really communicate what's going on with themselves, and you might feel like you are often walking on eggshells and are worried about saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing because you don't really know how they're going to react. Another defining feature is that they often have poor communication skills, especially when it comes to them talking about their emotions and being able to express their emotions clearly and authentically and non-offensively and non-defensively, which again, they will either go into lashing out or shutting down when they're having big feelings because they don't know what else to do. Another defining feature is that they are often dependent on other people for emotional support. So they rely on others for a lot of validation. They seek out a lot of external sources for reassurance. And it can even sometimes feel exhausting because they're always kind of searching for affirmation, for confirmation, for validation, to more of an extreme point. Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, they might be quite avoidant, where they hold themselves back. You often feel this distance with them, and even when you bring it up, they will likely deny it or tell you that you're reading too much into something. Another defining feature is that they have a hard time being vulnerable. They have a hard time being honest about how they're really feeling. If they're feeling scared, if they're feeling hurt, if they're feeling upset about something and something has hit something vulnerable in them, they don't really want to talk about it because there is this fear of judgment or of rejection or of being seen as weak. Another part of emotional immaturity is that they are quite resistant to feedback. If you ever have a complaint about something, the way they said something or did something, the way that they treated you or didn't treat you that you found difficult or hurtful or upsetting, even if you bring it up in a really clean, clear, and classy way, they will likely either get defensive or just deny it altogether, or they might find a way of turning it back on you, which can be so frustrating if you're actually trying to have an honest adult conversation and work something out, deal with something to make the relationship better, and they're unable or unwilling to have those conversations without turning it on you, turning away, or completely shutting down. Another part of emotional immaturity is, similarly to this feedback part, is that they really have a hard time taking any responsibility. So it can look again like blaming other people, blaming you, or overly blaming themselves. By that, I mean, if you ever have any kind of complaint, if you ever bring anything up that you'd like to work out, something that they did that they had a part of in some kind of issue, they might go into that over-blaming of themselves. Oh, I guess I'm just a terrible person. Why do you even bother to spend any time with me? I guess I can't do anything right. And that might sound like they are taking over responsibility, that they are, really kind of taking on what you said, but that's just, again, a deflection of responsibility. And it might be confusing for you because you're like, well, they admitted that they had done something wrong, so why does it feel so wrong? Why doesn't this feel better? And that's because over-blaming of self is, again, an avoidance of responsibility. So now, what can you do? What can they do? What can you help to guide them towards in order to build that emotional maturity? The first thing that they need to do to become more emotionally mature is they need to develop some self-awareness. They need to be able to recognize their part in issues, in conflict, in upsets, and be able to just sort of reflect on how their behaviors, their words, their actions might impact somebody else. This can be successful if you are able to express how you're feeling in, again, like I said, that clean, clear, and classy way. We work a lot on that kind of communication in my membership community, the Shift Society. We really work on being effective in our communication in a way that is going to be clear and honest, but not an attack, not something that someone is likely to take as offensive, which would then put them on the defense. But really guiding someone towards becoming more self-aware by trying your best to point things out that they have done or that they have said that has had an impact on you, which again means not blaming them, but owning your own experience and letting them know how that impacted you. The next thing you could do is encourage them to learn about emotional intelligence. There is a lot of information out there, and I am going to shamelessly plug my book for this one, Drive Your Own Darn Bus. This is a great way to introduce someone into understanding their thoughts and emotions and how those are connected. It talks about shame in there. It talks about past pain and past hurt and how that can impact how we're showing up now, how we feel about ourselves, how we interact with others. It goes deeper without going too heavy. In the book, there is a lot of tools and a lot of information that's easy to understand and easy to access, that's easy for our brains to kind of grasp, but also not too simple. It's not too simplified. It goes deep, but also really effective. So that is a great place to start for someone. If you want to recommend that to them, they would get a lot out of that. If you haven't read it, which I'm sure you probably have by now, but you would get a lot out of that one as well if you haven't. The next thing that you can do is to encourage them to speak up and to be able to set their boundaries when something isn't okay with them, to encourage them to speak up about it, to talk about it. Sometimes people are like, well, I just don't want to say anything because I don't want to make a big drama or I don't want to make a big deal out of it. But then they end up swallowing all those feelings and then creating a whole bunch of anger and resentment that ends up coming out in these really emotionally immature ways by, again, lashing out or shutting down. So encouraging that person to be like, hey, if something isn't okay with you, if something doesn't work for you, I would like you to let me know. I would prefer honesty over pent up, built up anger and resentment. The next thing you could do, like we talked about, is you really working on your own clean, clear, and classy communication, modeling that to them, because that is definitely a huge part of becoming more emotionally mature, is learning how to get in charge of your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own experience, and then being able to communicate that in a clean, clear, and classy way. So you modeling that in the relationship is going to go a really long ways. And also encouraging them to, like I say, encourage them to say it, don't spray it. If you're having a thought, if you're having a feeling, if you're upset about something, tell me. Don't come at me. Don't criticize me. Don't get all angry at me. Tell me what's going on inside of you, what your experience is, what you are feeling. Say it. Don't spray it. Another thing you can do to help them is, this one's not so easy, but you can encourage them to take responsibility for their actions. This can look something like simply prompting them to say, do you see how this could have impacted me? Does it make sense when I say to you that this hurt my feelings or that this bothered me or wasn't okay with that? If you were to put yourself in my shoes, could you see how this could have been upsetting or hurtful? Is it possible? So trying to encourage them to put themselves in somebody else's shoes, trying to encourage them to not take all the responsibility, not you saying to them, it's all your fault. Why can't you see that it's all your fault? Even if it might have been, they likely are not ready for that and they're going to shut down and go into shame or go into blame. if you approach it that way, but simply just saying, do you see how your words or your actions contributed to this issue that we're having? Could you see how that could have had an impact on me? And so gently kind of encouraging them to see things, to recognize things, to see their part without going into overly blaming them. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, this feels like a lot of work. And I'm going to tell you, yes, it is. If you are in a close relationship with somebody who is emotionally immature, it is work. It takes a lot of work on your part, and it also is going to take work on their part. And if they are willing to do the work, then congratulations. That is wonderful that you are in a close relationship with somebody who is willing to do this work. But yes, it's going to require a lot from you. And you might be thinking, well, Julia, is it even worth it? Well, if you have committed to this relationship, if this person is going to be in your life and you are going to keep them in your life, I'm going to tell you it's going to be far more exhausting, far more frustrating, far more difficult to just keep things as they are, to kind of just keep existing in the relationship in this way. So if you are willing to work with them, to encourage them, to support them, to model to them now, the goal is that it's going to make things better soon. Later, but hopefully sooner rather than later, as opposed to doing nothing and things just stay like this. You are going to need to be able to keep yourself centered, to keep yourself grounded. I have a guided mindfulness exercise for you. You can grab in the description below. That is a really great one that's really going to ground you, really going to get you out of these feelings of annoyance and frustration and teach you how to observe your thoughts and how to ground yourself without getting quite so worked up in any of life's challenging circumstances. So make sure that you grab that. Grab my book, Drive Your Own Darn Bus. You can get it on Audible, so you can listen to it. They can listen to it. You can get the hard copy on Amazon. And make sure that you have support. Make sure that you have other people around you who are emotionally mature, who are doing this work, who are able to be there with and for you, who are easier to be around so that you have that in your life as well. Let me know what connected with you. And as always, it is amazing to have you here. Take good care of yourself. Take good care of those around you. Bye for now.